Welcome to Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. Decoding the beliefs and strategies of global experts to give you an updated mindset to make the most of modern life. Hosted by the UK's most in-demand and highest paid hypnotherapist, Adam Cox.
Welcome to Modern Mindset. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today, we have Steve Woody, who is an author and crypto investor. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So first of all, let's learn a bit about you because, we had a brief chat before we went live there, and you weren't always kind of like in this kind of business investing space. Give us a bit of a backdrop so we get to know who you are.
Sure. I would say my journey started, I had a good upbringing. Parents divorced, but apart from that, there was no story that I could speak about on stage. I saw a lot of that as I was growing up. People would have these stories about how they'd struggled and overcome their adversity, and I never had that. I always had a good upbringing, so I've got nothing. Any undoing that I've had in my life has been my own, my own making. So I joined the army when I was 18. I was in the army for 6.5 years. I traveled a bit. I left the army, become a lorry driver. I had a bit of a gambling problem, which I kind of later in life realized that gambling wasn't the problem as much as it was a vehicle that I used for escapism. And escapism was the real crux of the problem. And so as a result of that, I ended up in debt. I spent most of my late 20s throughout all of my 30s in debt. I got married, I got divorced, I had many, many jobs. And I finally started to settle when I had my daughter, and I realized that I couldn't continue living this like scarcity, feast and famine, almost like bipolar kind of lifestyle. And so I started to settle down. I started to look at what I was going to do with my life. And I was interested in websites. So I became a website developer. And this was before it became trendy in places like the Philippines with outsourcing. And so I had a skill that was in demand, and I could earn quite well from it. And then the whole outsourcing movement happened, and that was really when I found I was fighting with people in the Philippines over cost of living in the UK, especially in London, so expensive that they could just undercut me on a website, and there was nothing I could do about it. And so I'm a fan of Tony Robbins. I've been to a lot of UPWs and a lot of I've crewed and been involved in that positive mindset kind of space now, that I started asking myself better questions. And it wasn't kind of like, why is this wrong? It's like, how can I make this better? What can I do differently? And that empowered me to look at the problems where most people in the web design space weren't focused on strategy. That people in India and the Philippines could build a website, but that website didn't necessarily work. It didn't get an outcome. It was just a website. So I wrote a book. The book was called Plan Your Website. That did extremely well. It landed me clients like Harvard, and it got translated into countries. It's being used in universities around the world. It was translated into Arabic. It's being used in Saudi Arabia to teach to students over there. And so I was really proud of that. And that boosted my web design career. I started my own company back in 2013. And from strength to strength, I grew it until I had a breakdown and kind of realized I didn't want to leave this life. I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy. And as a result, I started to kind of just neglect my clients, let people down. I wasn't really focused, and I definitely wasn't fulfilled. And so pre-COVID, I kind of was in this slump where I had this business, I had staff, I wasn't feeling motivated, I definitely wasn't feeling happy. And I just got myself into what I consider an obscene amount of debt. And I think at the worst point, and I think everything's relative, so it might not be a lot to some people, but to me, at the worst point, it was £116,000 of personal debt I was in. And when I say personal, I mean, some of it was clients, but because my clients were my friends, I treated everything personally. And I had a decision as to whether I needed to go bankrupt, and I refused. And I vowed that I would find a way, and I would find a way to overcome that adversity. And kind of fast forward to the lockdown stage, where I've gone through all of that adversity, and I kind of got comfortable in that story of being poor and having no money and being a victim. And I got a phone call, and I think everybody has experienced this phone call. And if you haven't, you probably will. And I hope you don't, but everyone has that phone call where you drop everything in a moment. And for me, I was sitting at home, I was eating some food, and I got a phone call that my stepdad had a heart attack. And that was it. I dropped everything, and I never went back to that house ever again. I went to the hospital. I spent 3 weeks in a hospital with my stepdad. He got rushed up to London, had a double heart, a valve replacement, and survived the operation, come home, and started to get better. And you kind of know when someone's starting to get better because he started to moan again. And so to me, I was like, okay, you're doing okay now, I can leave. But because at that point we was in full-blown lockdown, it was very difficult to move. And so I couldn't go back to my house. Everything I had got packed up and put into storage by the landlord. And I was living on my mum's sofa at kind of nearly 40 years old. And that care of my stepdad, which was a very surreal thing, because it wasn't just a physical care. There was a lot of emotional and mental care that I didn't realize. Like, my stepdad was suffering from anxiety, agoraphobia, and it hit me really hard because I kind of got forced into a role that I wasn't expecting. And it broke my pattern, and it made me forget my story. To the fact that to the point that I stopped focusing on my story. I didn't forget the story. In fact, I was very much aware of it because I promised myself I'd never go back to it. And so I started working again in the business. The business was going quite well. And then after lockdown finished, unfortunately, well, actually, towards the end of lockdown, my stepdad took a turn for the worse and he passed away. And I ended up living with my mum because she's disabled, and I was caring for my mum for the best part of 12 to 14 months. And it was a very, very difficult thing to do because, you know, as a child, and I mean, I know I'm not a child anymore, but you always see your parents, or a lot of people see their parents as providers and as the rocks in their life. And for me to have to care for mine was that role reversal. And I know people have experienced this. It humbles you in a way, but it also puts things into a perspective that we're very limited on time on this planet. And so I started to look at, well, what am I going to do? I'm not happy in my life. I'm not happy in my job. I need to change things. And I had not a lot of money, but there was a little bit of money from my stepdad passing that we were able to invest. And I had a decision. And I kind of needed to decide, well, what am I going to do with my life? I'm in a lot of debt. I could pay off some of my debt, but paying off my debt isn't going to solve the problem. I'm still going to have more debt. And so I needed to change what got me into that situation. And so rather than paying off, and this was the hardest thing I think I've ever done, rather than paying off any of my debt, I invested the money. And I spoke to all of the people that I owed money to. And I said, look, I can't pay you yet, but I will. Just trust me. I will do this. It's going to take time. I just need you to give me some time. And most people had written the debt off and given up on me. And that's fine. What I will say is that not one person spoke ill of me publicly. And I have so much respect for people, because it's a real show of character. When you owe somebody money and you can't pay them, how they respond to you is a real test of character, I believe. And so what I did is I took that money and I invested it in crypto, which some people would see was maybe a crazy, stupid thing to do. But I think at that point in my life, that was when my back was against the wall and I didn't care anymore. Like, I had nothing left to lose. I'd lost everything anyway. And it was a case of, well, go big or go home sort of thing, or go bust. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that brought me up to the start of this year.
And I guess that's the opportunity. And I was 23 when I set my business up, and, you know, a lot of people back then said, that's really brave, really courageous to kind of leave a job and set up a business when you're so young. And for me, it wasn't, because when you're at that point and you have no assets, you know, and you're at that kind of age, you can lose everything and start again, and it doesn't really matter. In fact, even if you do lose, you're going to buy yourself an education that's worth more than what you would spend like doing an MBA or something like that. So there is a weird power in having that kind of freedom of not worrying, like you can't lose more than you're already in that kind of situation. What was it that made crypto appealing to you, do you think, when you had perhaps other things that you can consider when your back was against the wall?
Well, it's interesting you say that, and it reminds me of Gary V. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about that when he says fail fast, fail often, and he talks about it. And a lot of people don't hear it, but I agree. I think if you can make mistakes, like the biggest lessons you can have in life is experience. And if it's not your own experience, it's the experience of other people. But it's definitely there's you've got this invincibility at a younger age, and this mindset where you can recover and bounce back so much quicker. And for me, I actually spoke to someone who I respected. He was a mutual friend. We'd connected a few times, but I saw he was doing good things. He had multiple companies. Really, really great guy. I had a lot of respect for him. We shared a love through hate, which is ironic, but we both dislike a certain event company that I won't name names, but there's a very well-known event company who actually managed Tony Robbins and a few other people. And
the initials SR by any chance?
You know them well. Yes, you know them well. So, and don't, look, here's the difficulty here is that I really like the owners. You know, I just don't like the model. I don't like the model, and that's the difficulty. And I have a lot of people like that in this space. I grew up in this entrepreneurial world at a later stage of my life. Like my dad was working class, my mum didn't work, and so my dad was always go to work. He very much was brought up on the belief of the 40-40-40 model, where you work for 40 hours for 40 weeks for 40 years. You know, and if you've paid off your mortgage, then you've won life. Well done, you. I didn't like that model. It felt quite restricted to me, and so I was looking at what I could get into and how I could get into it. And I saw these people on stage, and I saw wealth experts that were going through bankruptcies. I saw health experts that were doing drugs. I saw relationship experts that were getting divorced. And I just saw behind the scenes on all of these events. And I was very blessed and fortunate to be connected with people that allowed me to mingle behind stage and with these people. But at the same time, I just saw a side that I just didn't enjoy. And it really turned me off of this. Like when you go to these events to get the hope and to get the, you know, that energy and to see behind the scenes and to have that destroyed, it really jaded me. And I started to really distrust and dislike personal development and entrepreneurs in that whole space. And the world in general, I was very anti corporations and corporate greed and money. And that fueled that kind of demise that I was on. So what happened was I spoke to this friend who said that I should invest in my business. And the irony is I didn't take his advice, but he said I would never get a better return than the return I would get in my business. Because I said, should I trade? Should I get property? What should I do? How can I make this money work? I was really struggling. He just said, put it in advertising in your business, focus on your business, get your products out there. You'll never get a better return. So against his advice, I was watching what he was doing, and he was in crypto. Now, I was involved in crypto in the army. It was actually what we used in the military to send communications across secure networks, and I was in the signals. So when I was in the army, I actually worked on crypto, so I know about crypto. I know about the encryption side of things, and I know how secure it is. For somebody to take that military technology and to apply it to civilian life, but in a way that disrupts the financial institution and the technology as we know it, blew me away. And as the second I saw it, I got it. I just knew. And so I invested in Bitcoin back in kind of like 2014. So I bought like 2.5 Bitcoin in 2014, and I sold them in 2015. I made a loss. I was stupid, but I was desperate for the money. So I knew it was going to be something, but I didn't know it would take this. Like, it's easy in hindsight to look back. Oh, if only I'd kept hold of it. So that was one of my regrets, was selling the Bitcoin. And I promised myself I would never do that again. If I bought, I would hold. And so I decided to take that money to buy into crypto. And I actually got back into the market in April, May this year, which if anybody that's been in a market for a while or just started would know that we got, you know, the market I won't say it got wrecked, but we had a 50% correction. And for anybody that jumped in when Bitcoin was at $60,000 to have a 50% correction, that hurts. What I did is I followed my friend, and his name is Siam Kidd. Great guy, really, really respect him. So I followed all of his advice. I consumed every bit of information he had, every video he had, every course he put out, everything he had, I consumed. And then I started consuming other people, and I was so hungry for knowledge, I couldn't stop myself. And I just consumed in such a short space of time everything that I could. And I wouldn't say I became an expert, but I definitely had an awareness of what was right and what was wrong.
Mm.
And so, yeah, that was kind of my introduction into crypto, was taking £25,000 as a loan from my mum at the time, and investing it into crypto, and within a month doubling it,
Which is
in a bear market. Well,
yeah.
in a crash.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say you started at April, May. You know, I pretty much got into at a very small level. You know, kind of crypto May kind of all-time highs. You know, particularly for Bitcoin at the time, and then it's kind of like, you know, I my first reaction was, this is brutal. This is a brutal kind of place. You get the timing wrong, it can hurt you. And I think the mistake that a lot of people make is they treat it like gambling, like at the casino or on a horse. It's kind of like, did I win? Did I lose? Right. I lost. Right. Take the losses and kind of go away. But actually, there is another way of looking at it, which is this idea of, you know, dollar cost averaging, where actually you can get the same asset that you paid for one price at a cheaper price when in a bear market, when it goes down. And then, you know, weirdly, because I bought like 3 or 4 times, you know, as it's heading down, and then some of those right at the bottom, you know, because then it kind of went on a nice kind of upward streak, you know, trebled, quadrupled. And for me, that have traditionally invested in funds, you know, mutual funds, I was seeing returns in a month that I would see in a year, in a good year. And I thought, this can't be right. And I think one of the things that pops into people's heads when they see such dramatic returns, can't
Gambling,
be sustainable.
right? That's what people think.
Or that it's a Ponzi scheme,
yeah.
That it relies on constant flow of new money coming in. You know, I'm sure you've considered, you know, the counter arguments of crypto, that actually even Warren Buffett, you know, says, well, there's no actual tangible value behind it. What would your response be to those kind of people that are the critics of crypto, that they say, well, hold on a minute, this is all very flimsy. It just relies on new money coming in to make it sustainable.
I watched an interview recently, and it was absolutely fascinating. This guy, incredible guy, I can't remember his name, but he was on the news, and he was asked this exact question. And he said, if you don't get it by now, I can't help you. Just sit back, watch us. Like, never in a history before has a new monetary system ever been created out of thin air in such a short space of time. This is like, when you look at crypto, most people just think Bitcoin, or they might know about altcoins and a few things. But when you actually deep dive into the applicational, when you look at the asset classes that are being created and the applications and what this will do to the world, it's layer upon layer of new technology, which is going to completely not only disrupt, but just change the world as we know it.
Mm. And I agree with that. You know, the best metaphor that I've stumbled across that I could get my head around the value, rather than, because my initial thought was, yes, Ponzi scheme, you know, constant new money coming in. That's the only thing holding it up. But then, you know, I forget who it is, but they said, well, look, nobody thinks that the internet is going away now, because there are so many applications that entirely rely on that. You know, 20 years ago, it would be the real geeks and nerds that would be kind of aware of the internet. And now everyone uses the internet every single day. And blockchain effectively is going to be, you know, almost the infrastructure that lots of these kind of applications rely on, in a very safe, decentralized way that radically change the way that the world is. And I think it was Charles Hodgson's, the founder of Cardano. He was saying that you've got 3 billion people in the world that don't have access to things like a bank account, identification, proof of where they own. And this is going to change that on a global scale. So in many ways, investing in crypto is a little bit like investing in the internet, but also humanity, but the internet at the point where the internet was about to become
when everyone had AOL and dial-up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, free serve. You know, it's at that kind of time.
This is the thing. Like, people, when things go public and when they become like for you know, the public consumption, what people fail to realize is, like, crypto's been around for a long time. It's not new technology. And Bitcoin's been around for 10 years now. The power is not Bitcoin. The power is DLT. When you look at distributed ledger technology, so blockchains and what that can do, you're going to be able to, for the first time in human, like if you think, and I don't want to get political, and there's a real challenge with not getting political here, but when you look at a government's purpose is to serve its citizens, but a government needs its citizens. The citizens don't really need the government. However, we've got to that place now where we're so reliant through welfare and help and aid that we do need the government for those things. You know, they're doing trials now in Wales where they've got this universal income, where it doesn't matter what your status is in society, you will earn a basic wage regardless of whether you work or not. And what we're doing now by allowing people to earn money playing games, it's unheard of. And a lot of people don't understand it. And a lot of the people who I find that don't understand it are more the working class boomer generation, like, the parents and the grandparents who are like, who don't like change, who don't understand it. And yes, there is a lot of in the media, oh, this coin's just done 1,000% and this is just pumped and that's going up and this is crazy. And you know, people jump into the hype and then they get wrecked because if you hear it in the media, it's too late. That's the first. That's
like anyone buying Shibu right now.
Yeah, if you're buying, well, I posted this morning. People turn around to me, and go, "Oh, I'm in crypto," and I say, "Okay, cool. What's your portfolio look like?" Yeah, I bought Doge and Shiba Inu. I'm like, "You're not in crypto. You're gambling with crap. Like you're hoping on a moonshot." Yeah, but if it goes to $1, do you realize what the market cap would have to be for Shiba Inu to get to one? It's not possible.
Trillions of them.
There's not enough money in the world to get Shiba Inu to $1. Like it would have to be hundreds of trillions of dollars in crypto alone. It's crazy. And I'm not saying it won't get there one day, but look, I think it's pretty obvious now that fiat money, and when I say fiat, for anyone that's not aware, fiat is just any government-backed currency, pound, dollar, euro, Turkish lira. The biggest lesson I had was when I went to Turkey and we changed up our money into Turkish lira and we had so much money. You know, we were so rich in Turkey. At that holiday, we could buy anything we wanted. And I remember feeling so wealthy. Yet the people in Turkey, that was their normal currency. So to them, you know, they felt poor compared to places like the UK and the US. So we compare, like, and I'm going to use the pound because the pound is actually stronger than the dollar. But when you compare the pound to the Turkish lira, it's very strong. So we have, and this is my problem, is psychologically, and a lot of people are in this same position. I've decoupled myself from it. I unplugged. And I'm very blessed to have been able to do that because for a long time, I struggled. But what I did is I realized that all a currency does is it controls you. It holds you hostage because you believe in its value so much that you are willing to spend your life working for it and not actually living. You know, some people are so poor, the only thing they've got is money. And I truly believe that comparison that I had to the pound to the lira is the same comparison that people have from crypto to the pound. The pound is not valuable. Any fiat currency is only as valuable as the government and the people and the citizens agree. Yeah.
It's a confidence trick at some level. And it's also one of those things that is being devalued by, you know, central governments all around the world because they had to have a way of dealing with not just a pandemic, but now they've got this kind of magic wand that actually stimulus is going to be the go-to way of dealing with financial difficulty, which fundamentally devalues the currency.
But that's what the governments want because then people are reliant on the government. They need the government. You know, the only way, like, governments are like a dying breed and they're desperately clinging on to whatever they can at the moment. That's how I see this. I may be wrong and people may disagree with me, and that's fine. You do you. But the way I see it is that currency was never going to survive. You go back to bartering, you go back to any means of trade, and you look at the money. And, you know, when money was redeemable against gold, you know, fair enough. It had value. And it had a purpose. But when Nixon back in 71 took it off the gold standard and it become the ability to just print money. And like you say now, look at America. More money has been has been produced in the last 8 months, then like I can't give you the exact figures because I don't know them, but
it's trillions. I mean,
just
it's
look
insane
at
amount.
the amount of money being printed. It is insane.
Which is good for people holding assets and very bad for people that either don't, for those people renting, they don't have any assets, they don't have any funds, don't have any investments, and they're relying on a job. Well, the fundamental salary they get from that job is being eroded by government printing money. Money buys you less of what it does before, which means people have to work harder.
This is when I got involved in economics. When I went to the shop and found a Freddo bar for 50p, when I found a pack of Space Raiders for 50p, and the cheek of it is they're smaller. You get less. You pay more and get less. That's when I suddenly woke up and said, hold on a minute. This isn't just about inflation. You look at inflation, look at the interest rates going up, right? And you put inflation at what, 3-4%, whatever you want to put it at. It doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant, because the true inflation is more like 15 to 20%.
Yeah.
Because when you look at purchasing power, if you've got £1,000 in your bank in 12 months' time, you've got £900. Because that £1,000 just can't buy you the same as it could a year ago. That's what I say to people that look at property. If you have a house and you buy a house and then in 10 years you sell that house but do nothing to it, the value of the house does not go up. The value of the house stays exactly the same. It's just the value of the pound has gone down, which makes the house more expensive. Most people can't afford to buy a house. So when you're looking at an asset class of something which is appreciating in value compared to a depreciating currency, crypto is just the absolute obvious entry point that anyone can get into. And I had this question yesterday. A friend turned around and said, I want to get into crypto, but I don't have much money. What's a cheap crypto to get involved in? Well, it doesn't matter. You can buy the most expensive crypto for £1 because it's decimalized to a point that it's fractional. You will own a part of that crypto. You don't have to own a whole crypto anymore. And so when you consider that in itself, currency is struggling. And now we've got this ability to decimalize down to 8, 9, sometimes 18 decimals. You can start to understand things like Spotify and how artists are going to get paid differently, because with NFTs, and it's a whole new world, but things like Spotify are going to struggle in the future because artists are going to be able to create their own music through NFTs and be paid fractionally every time someone listens to it. It just opens up a whole new world of opportunity. And there's companies like Audius that are already doing this.
Yeah.
And so, it's
a big paradigm shift, isn't it? And it's a lot to get your head around when you think, because I think we everyone that's alive today has grown up in an environment where they've been reliant on centralized systems. And the big players, in any industry, you're reliant on, whoever it might be, your bank, you're reliant on, big retailers like Tesco and things like that. So the idea that, is almost the equivalent of going back to like a chain of like independent shops all over the place. Like that's a lot. It's like, well, why would that happen? But within technology, it can happen.
And it has to happen.
And it has that. Because I mean, we saw it with the outage with, Facebook and WhatsApp and that kind of stuff. That's the downside of being reliant on one entity, is that they hold a lot of control. And I think this kind of anti-capitalist movement and the anti kind of control movement is actually what's going to fuel, blockchain and this kind of decentralized kind of way of thinking a lot more, because it seems fairer and more stable as well.
I think we need both. See, I'm not anti-establishment, because I understand that we need rules, we need regulations. But I think the problem is, over the years, those establishments have blurred the lines. And what we need more than anything now is respect and transparency. And I think blockchain gives us transparency. We can see apps. There will be no need for accountants in the future. There'll be no need for brokers. They won't exist. You won't need them. The way that we're moving with technology, and like the scariest thing to me, and this is what I hate, is the scariest thing in crypto to me is CBDCs. For anyone that's not aware, that's a central bank digital currency. They are so dangerous, because what that does is it gives the government complete transparency over everything you do. This is why I'm so bullish on privacy coins and things that are going to allow us to maintain some discretion, because I think we need that. Because being transparent is okay as long as you trust the party that you're being transparent with. But when they're doing things untoward, and we know this is true, history's proven this time and time again. Like, governments can't be trusted with our money. You know, money is wasted on wars and things that aren't serving us. And, you know, there's always a new angle and a new spin, and whatever you want to make of whatever conspiracy theory is relevant to the fact that the best person who can decide what is going to be done with your finances is you. This is why it doesn't matter how much someone gets taxed, because rich people are clever enough to know how to not evade. It's not about evading tax. It's about avoiding tax. It's about how you can use your company and your business and how you can move things. And you can blame people like, you know, Jeff Bezos and other people like that for not paying tax, or you can blame the system, because at the end of the day, it's the system that allows them to do these things.
But what was evident from the Pandora Papers and the Panama Papers before that is that the very people that influence the laws are also exploiting those same laws to avoid tax. So there is a huge conflict of interest there in terms of you know, the system itself. But what I think, you know, anyone can agree on is that in an environment where there is full transparency, you know, then it becomes and traceability as well. Then hiding money in the Cayman Islands or whatever it might be is a lot harder to do. Easy to do if it's cash, because you're kind of relying on kind of central systems. In a place where every, you know, kind of item on the ledger is kind of recorded, you know, forever. Very difficult to kind of do that. So do you see this kind of leading to a fairer system? Because the counter argument is that actually the people that are going to make huge amounts of kind of wealth in crypto are the people that have excess cash, and therefore it could just create a bigger, you know, kind of financial divide than ever before.
Yeah, it can. And I think it will to a degree, but I think it also gives opportunity to those that didn't have it. You know, somebody before that couldn't get involved in assets because they couldn't afford a house can now get involved in, you know, like you said, perfect example, dollar cost average. People are more than happy to have a Netflix subscription. They're more than happy to have a Spotify subscription. They're more than happy to have subscriptions for all kinds of things. Why don't you have a crypto subscription? Why don't you have £10 a month going into a crypto account buying Bitcoin? And Bitcoin is probably the worst crypto you can buy. Like, I don't own any Bitcoin because there are other ways. Like, to me, it's all about efficiency now. And I think there's better ways to do things. But why would you not do that? Why would you not put 10, 20% of your paycheck away for your future, for your wealth? And this is the thing, that we have an opportunity right now. We have the fastest growing technology in the fastest growing industry in the world ever seen in humanity happening right now. And people turn around to me and go, oh yeah, I'd love to get involved, but I don't have any money. And I'm like, well, that's BS, because I actually did a stream where I took a credit card and I borrowed money on the credit card to buy crypto. And then I used the interest that I was earning on the crypto to pay off the credit card's interest and have profit. And so I was able to borrow money, and I did it as an example, because I got myself out of debt. So the £100,000 in debt I was in, I paid that off in 2 months. So as I said, I got into the market, and I got back into crypto in April, learning, researching, doing my due diligence, doing my research. And then I got into the market in May as we crashed. And I rode the market down, and I got in and out, and I traded it very, very well. I was very fortunate, and I managed to pay off that £100,000 debt in 2 months. 2 months on from that, and I was 100,000 in profit. That gave me more opportunities to be able to do different things. But it also allowed me to see that my limitations were because of me, not because of anything else. There is always a way to be able to get money, even if you have none. There's always a way to be able to have opportunities. You know, if you're listening to this show, then you're connected to the internet. You've got opportunities. It's just whether you choose to use them or not.
It's fundamentally a mindset thing, because, you know, for me, when I got into crypto, it was a case of, right, well, there is this kind of thing with, you know, I looked at it as a hedge. You know, it was kind of like, you know, I only put in enough that I'm willing to lose, because at that point I was looking at it as gambling. And it's kind of like, you hear these stories of like 2 billion% return on like Bitcoin from the early days. And like even Shiba that we were talking about had like 2 million% in the last year and that kind of stuff. And you kind of think, well, actually, if I put 10% of my assets into crypto, worst case scenario, you write off that 10%.
Yep.
But if it does give you these kind of, exponential returns that, aren't even guesswork. You can see by looking backwards. No guarantee it's going to happen in the future. But if what has happened in the past happens in the future, well, that gives a massive potential upside that a lot of people, it's life-changing for the average person. If you have even a small proportion in, I was teaching my daughter yesterday about, the basics of crypto. And it's kind of like, well, let's look at a few of these coins and imagine that you'd put £50 in a year ago. What would you have now? And she couldn't get her head around the numbers because for her, she can put £50 in. But the idea that it could produce something exponentially back is it's mind blowing.
Well, this is what did it for me, is that my mum had savings. I mentioned before about my stepdad passing away. My mum got some savings as a result of that, some life savings, and it was in premium bonds for her. And it was about the time when NS&I got wrecked. I don't know if anyone remembers, post-COVID, everything got decimated. And I was looking at bank accounts, and the best bank account, the absolute best bank account I could find was 3%. 3%. And there was crazy loopholes. Like you could only put in £50 a month to get to that. And it could only
regular
be a maximum
saving accounts.
And it could only be like a maximum of 1,000. Everything else was either 0.01 or 0.1 or, at best of 1%. So I'm looking at this, and because of my mindset at the time, I'm like, okay, so this is standard. This is what we expect. This is what we know. We trust the government for whatever reason. And let me just say this, we trust the banks, but we only trust the banks because we know no different. If you trust the bank with your money, and I mean this respectfully, it's because you don't have enough money. That's the only reason you trust the bank. Because as soon as you have large amounts of money that you try to move in and out of a bank account, you realize you can't. I've had 3 bank accounts frozen this month with large sums of money in them. And I understand the anti-money laundering and I get that, but it makes you realize I had a client pay me and I had to submit bank statements of the client to be able to release their funds into the bank account.
It's madness.
It's madness. I've got friends that have had to in other countries submit police reports to be able to get access to their funds. When you put your money into a bank, you are giving the bank your money. You no longer own that money. The bank are promising to give it back to you, but you no longer own that money. And the difference in crypto is that when you have a decentralized, and I'm not talking about any exchange, if you go onto something like Binance or Coinbase or any of those, they're no different to a bank. You're buying crypto and you're leaving it in an exchange, which is a bank. It's a centralized platform. It's what a bank is. But when you look at DeFi, and this, I think it was someone in Goldman Sachs said this, we were so busy looking at Bitcoin that we didn't see DeFi coming. Bitcoin's not the problem. Crypto's not the problem. The disruptor in the world is DeFi, decentralized finance, peer-to-peer lending. The reason that I'm able to get 250% on my interest accounts right now is because we've cut out the middleman. And when you cut the middleman out, when you take out the brokers, when you take out the traders, when you take out the banks, when you take them out, you realize just how much you're getting screwed. The reason you're getting 1% is because they're taking that 249% for themselves.
Yeah.
Which is why they've got so much money. And yet you're happy to sit there and go, yeah, but I trust them because the government's going to look after me.
Yeah.
It's madness.
But trust comes from experience. And I won't lie, the first time that I transferred money from an exchange into a wallet, in that couple of minutes where it's gone, I was fucking nervous. Not gonna lie, it's like,
and that's, you were lucky if it was a couple of minutes. When it's an hour, you start to sweat.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because one of them, it had to kind of update the blockchain on this kind of wallet and from scratch, and one of them, it was an hour, and I'm like, am I going to see that money again? Like, but once you do it a few times, it's kind of like in the same way that you fly for the first time, you're like, am I going to land? But once you do it, you have confidence in the experience.
Absolutely.
And then you start thinking, well, I've got more confidence. I'd have more confidence in a crypto transaction than I would sending money through Western Union, where it's like, how do I know that money's going to get to the other end? And already I'm thinking, why would I go back to the old ways of transferring money, which rely on things like, these kind of money transfer. They're taking massive fees, massive commissions, giving poor rates. And you still have to trust something outside of yourself. You have to trust their infrastructure rather than...
There's multiple third parties. You've got your bank, their bank, the payment processor. There's all of these. And look at what happened recently on Twitter. So now we've got companies like Western Union. So one of the biggest things in the world right now is overseas workers sending money back home. And all of this remittance and everything that's happening around the world. And then you look at companies like Western Union that take such a big cut for that process to happen. Now look at what can happen over the Bitcoin Lightning Network. You can give me your Twitter handle and I can send you money instantly from anywhere in the world with no fees instantly. It's just, it's the future of money transactions. I can send large amounts of wealth to anyone, anywhere, anonymously, even though, and here's the thing, people say, oh, but it's all transparent. I don't want people to see what I'm doing. The only thing that's transparent is the transactions themselves. The addresses are still anonymous. The addresses are still private. The only way that people know your address is if you've gone through KYC, know your customer. So if you've submitted ID onto something like Binance, which you have to do, and government regulations will require this, all of the big platforms, then yes, they can dip in and fight, like HMRC can see who you are, the IRS, whoever, they can see who you are. But if you go and set up a decentralized wallet like MetaMask on a Chrome browser on a Tor network, no one knows who you are. You can do what you want and no one, and people go, oh yeah, but drugs and money, like more of that's done through cash than anything else.
True.
It's going to happen whether we want it or not. And I see the future, and I may be wrong, but I see the future as a war on money. I see governments, as soon as they've released their CBDCs, they'll put a war on crypto, they'll put a war on money. COVID sped through the transfer of physical cash. And we're already seeing it. People say, oh, I could never give up physical cash. But how many people actually, if you're honest, have physical cash anymore? It's contactless. Everything's in your bank account. It's all tap to pay. And we're already transitioning into this space. It's nothing new.
No, it isn't. And you touched on kind of ridiculously low interest rates, in banks and that kind of stuff. What I think a lot of people don't appreciate within the crypto world, they get that, okay, you can buy it at one level and it might go up, it might go down, and they're hoping it goes up to get a basically an appreciation of the asset. What I think a lot of people don't really understand is that you can earn interest, through staking and kind of getting a return on that. Do you want to talk through how that works and why it works, within the model?
Yeah, I mean, so when I got into crypto, I started by trading. That was what I was doing, and I traded some of the main. I mean, look, I traded some bad coins. I will put my hand up. I bought Shiba. It was the first thing I ever bought. I didn't know any better. I was no different. But I learned very quickly. I probably lost about £1,000 on what are known as poo coins, shit coins. They're just coins that have no intrinsic value. There's no utility behind them. They're just hype, smoke mirrors. And I learned very, very quickly. These are the ones that you see absolute rocketing, doing ridiculous wealth, but then just crashing down straight after. And most people, general public, are the ones that get left holding the bag. They're the ones that end up buying when it's high, and then everyone else sells and they get wrecked. So it forced me to move over to stronger coins. So I will only invest in coins now that have real world utility, like the main networks like Ethereum, Cardano. So you've got Solano, you've got Polkadot, AVAX. Like those are the layer one solutions, the smart contract platforms, which I invest in. And then I started to look a bit further out in applications. There's, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but Link, you've got Matic, Polygon, then you've got these layer two solutions like Immutable X, Ronin, and they reduce a lot of the congestion on the layer one networks. So there's a lot of power there. Then you look at things like interoperability, like Quant. Then you look at governance and platforms like LCX, which are already the government need to have some legislation in place around some, crypto will be, will have governance around it. There has to be, it has to be, in order for it to scale at the level that we need it to scale at. There has to be that, that connection with government and with that governance. So I'm looking at those platforms. So then when I invested in all of those coins and I had all of these things that I was interested in, I started looking at, okay, so what's all of this staking about? And I started looking at Binance because that was what I was using at the time to do my trading. And they had this earn potential where you could earn like 5, 10, 15% Now, already I'm looking at a bank account. I'm thinking, why would I get 1% in a bank account when I can get 15% in an exchange? And even if you don't want to hold crypto per se, you could hold USDT, which is US dollar tether, which is pegged to the US dollar. So there's no volatility in it. Well, you can argue that there's some stuff going on behind the scenes, but you can look at these stable coins, which are pegged or are matched to the value of a currency, a fiat currency. And you're still able to get 15, 20% on these coins, meaning there's no variance in the risk of crypto. You're able to get better return than you can in a bank. Like, why would you not do that? It makes sense to me. So then I started looking at some more riskier plays. And I started looking at things like Cake. Now, Cake, Pancake Swap, part of Binance Smart Chain, 70%. Oh, at the time, I was getting 110%, and it was auto compounding. So I was like, okay, there's like hundreds of millions of dollars wrapped up in these contracts. My $1,000, you know, all right, I might risk it, but why not? I'll put it in there. And then of course, it's exactly what you said. It's experience, it's taking action. And once you do it a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit more, and the weeks turn into months, and then you start to see, well, actually, this is a real thing. And then you start to expand. And I started to look at other platforms, and yeah, some of these liquidity pools that you get into at the start, you can get like 2,500, 3,000%. I got into one called Aqua as an example, Planet Finance. And I bought that coin when I did my research, and I realized that when it launched initially, it launched up to $6,000, and then it crashed back down to like $100. But when you look at it on CoinMarketCap or any of the main tracking sites, that's not on there, because that was when it was known as a poo coin before it got onto. And when it was listed, it was seen as trading at like $100-200. So I bought into that coin about $150. And just yesterday, it went up to $1,250. So that growth. Now,
over what time period was that? That's like almost a 10x return over what period?
2 months, 3 months.
That's insane.
Yeah, but that's not the thing. When you look at the site and you understand, they were giving me at the time. So what blew my mind is I could do a liquidity. Now, I don't do liquidity pools, and I don't want to go into that too much because I think that's a whole rabbit hole. But there's risk with impairment loss that you could get trapped if you're not careful. Basically, if the value of, you have two coins and you put money into to stake against these two coins, and if the value of one goes up or down compared to when you got in too much, you could end up losing some of your stake. So I don't like that risk. But some of these pools, these liquidity pools, they're offering like 5,000% ROI. And I was looking at them thinking, this is insane. And I got into one, and I got scared. And after a couple of weeks, I got out of it and was like, no, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. But even looking at their vaults, which is single-sided staking, which is the only thing I do, where you put one coin in and then you pull that coin out at any point. And if the value of the coin goes up, then you make profit, but also you get your return on your investment as well. Because it's peer-to-peer lending. There are people that want to borrow the coin that you've got, and they're willing to pay you interest on it. So you don't need to go through a banking system. You don't need to go through third parties. It's just, I've got dollars, you've got pounds, you want dollars, I want pounds. So we basically swap. And we pay each other a little bit extra for the privilege. And when you do that on mass scale, that's all staking effectively is that you're locking up this money because, and these companies, they have reward pools. They have certain allocations of their token that they drip feed into these pools to reward the people that trust their platform. Because obviously the more money that gets locked up, the more engagement, the more exposure, the more they get seen, the more that happens, the more the coin is worth. So it works in that situation. Now, Aqua went up to $1,250. That's great. But I wasn't even bothered about that. That wasn't what I was looking at. I was earning 250. Even if it stayed at $150, I was getting 250% on that. I didn't need it to go up or down. It just needed to stay where it was.
I mean, that's a mind-boggling interest rate. Where does that come from? Like, how do you get such high returns on a?
You have to look at the tokenomics, so token economics. So what is the model? How does it work? What does it do? And when you look at something like Planet Finance as an example, it's built around the same premise of Bitcoin. There's a finite supply. There's a limited amount of coins. And once they're minted, that's it. And so it becomes of scarcity. And then when you look at the application and the functionality that they're building, you realize that if you get into some of these coins at these early stages, then you're able to make incredible wealth from them. And it's allowed me to, as I said, to take this £25,000, and I traded up some of it, and then I started staking. And I mean, I make right now, I don't mind sharing. I've got nothing to hide. You know, I'm still at the early stages of my journey. Like I said, I got into this without having a clue in sort of April, May, and we're kind of in October now. And already I'm earning, like, on average, and this is just on the staking side, I'm bringing in between 5,000 and 10,000 a month just from staking, plus what I'm making on my trading. And we haven't even touched into NFTs, which is a whole nother side of what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just, to me, staking was just a diversification from trading.
Yeah.
And
so effectively, it's tying up the asset for a period of time to get a return on that. And probably the most high profile staking right now is Ethereum, you know, prior to 2.0 coming out. You know,
but then you look at the returns on that and you think, well, and this is, again, it's down to efficiency.
Yeah.
This is why I don't own Bitcoin. Bitcoin's great, and that's the end goal, because to me, Bitcoin is a store of wealth. Bitcoin is like digital gold. But when Bitcoin grows 10%, altcoins and alternative coins to Bitcoin, alternative coins will grow 30-40%.
Mm-hmm. And
so for me, it's more about, what do I trust? What do I see with real world application, like Ethereum, Cardano? I would rather have my money in those than Bitcoin, because they're going to grow quicker, in my opinion.
Makes sense.
And then I can put it into Bitcoin later when I want to store it.
Yeah. So moving on to NFTs, and you know, effectively, most people's frame of reference for NFTs are going to be oddly colored gorillas and punks and things like that, and or collages
JPEGs.
of JPEGs with 1,000 different images in there, selling for 60 million at Sotheby's and things like that. Now the average person, including myself, is going to look at that and say, what idiot is going to spend millions of pounds on a JPEG? Or the first ever tweet as a JPEG, and it's kind of like, where's the value in that? Is this the Ponzi scheme part of crypto, where it's relying on more money flowing in, or speculation? Is it the tulip bubble, of Holland?
Mania, yeah.
Is that what it is with NFTs, or is there? You mentioned Spotify and things like that. I can see certain elements of real world applications and values of NFTs. I know you're really into Axie Infinity, which again has these kind of unique things that you own and you build and things like that. But the JPEGs, I can't get my head around. Why would there be value in a digital bit of art?
So if people think of NFTs in the same way as you think of a crypto token, in the sense that there are good and bad crypto tokens. There's over 10,000 crypto tokens out there. And a crypto token effectively is no different to like a Tesco or an Asda reward card. That's all it is. It's just the company are giving you an allocation, like a reward system. So when you think about it in that perspective, there are crypto tokens or crypto assets with utility, with real world utility, that do things. And there are those that don't. Now, NFTs are the same. There are NFTs out there that do things, that have utility, and there are NFTs that don't. Now, I've seen some of these people getting wrecked buying crazy NFTs. And yes, it's an absolute tulip mania at the moment, and that bubble will burst. But it's still a fun ride. And as long as you're careful and you don't risk more than you're willing to lose, I think ultimately the way you need to approach NFTs at the entry level is like art. You might see art hanging up in someone's house, and that piece of art might be worth £1 million, but to who? I might look at it and say, well, that's not very good. That has no value to me, but to somebody else, to a collector, an antique, something like that, anything only has the value in the world of the value that we give to it. Mm-hmm. And as we start to move into this new digital world, and we look at like Gen Z, and we look at millennials, and we look at people who just, my parents and grandparents were brought up believing that if you owned your house, you were successful. You paid off your mortgage, you were successful. What I believe in, and I've got I'm blessed and very privileged to see both sides. I can see my parents and grandparents, and I remember a world without technology, but also I can see my daughter and I can see my world and I can see what technology's done. So I can see both sides. And what I can say from my perspective with certainty is there is less interest in owning physical property and more interest in owning digital property. And I think that started, and we saw that with the transition into intellectual property, online courses, membership areas. Now, imagine an NFT like a key that unlocks doors. So if you have an NFT that would unlock access to certain websites, certain Discord channels, certain apps on phones, and if you own that NFT, then you get access to certain places. It now becomes like a VIP club.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to own that NFT to be part, and Axie do this as well. If you own a Mystic Axie, and to give you an idea, I think one of the cheapest Mystic Axies right now will cost you about $100,000. But if you own that, then you are included into a Mystic Owners Club, and there's like 300 or 400 people in the world. And it's like buying the top tier ticket at an event and going backstage and mingling with like-minded people. You create better opportunities in those environments.
So the value is from the exclusivity.
Exactly. So there is an element of that, but like with anything, there is also the people that are trying to make something out of nothing. And there's a lot of copycats out there. You know, you might look back like a few years to like crypto kitties or cyberpunks or anything where, you know, you see these things selling for ridiculous. Like a friend of mine recently had an auction and he commissioned and created some art. And he did it in NFT and it got forgotten about. And it now turns out that he created one of the first NFTs on the blockchain. And it just sold at auction for like $1 million. Now, that sat for years and didn't do anything. And when he made it, he said, like, I interviewed him recently and he said, yeah, I did it and I just forgot about it. It was just one of those things. But people are searching out, and there is a lot of money in the world. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of money. And the problem is that it's the distribution of that money, that wealth distribution, that's unfair.
Yeah.
But there are people that have got so much money that they don't know what to do with it, and they are more than willing to spend it on things that we would see as obscene and crazy. But it holds value to them, and that's all this is. It's just what the people. For a lot of people, it's ego, it's bragging rights. You know, it's the ability to say, I own that.
Yeah.
And when you've got enough money and money is no longer an issue, like, what do you do with your time? What do you do for fulfillment? I went down a different path. You know, I decided to help people, but some people, they greedy. Some people want to collect, and each to their own. You do you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's NFTs out there that have utility. And the best example I can give you, and this isn't the only example, it's one that I think most people can relate to. Take something traditional like ascot and horse racing, and consider how people like animal activists and cruelty to animals and things like that, and then take into consideration things like lockdowns and COVID. And when you look at the way the world is, you can see, it's possible to see that if they were to create a digital version of ascot, it could survive at a time when maybe the physical ascot couldn't. So now we look at things like horse racing. Now, creating these digital horses, these JPEGs, so to speak, a horse on its own as a JPEG, worthless. But imagine putting a horse into a track where it can race against other digital horses. Now you've got these NFTs that have now got value. Now go a step beyond that. Imagine taking one horse and creating a bloodline and having another horse with a bloodline. Now the original horses are going to hold more value. Now imagine giving these NFTs or these horses genetics, ears, eyes, color, hair. And now imagine breeding these two NFT JPEG horses together to create a baby horse. See, this is what I started doing with Axie. So there are people out there, breeders, and I do it myself, where I will take two NFTs and I will breed a third NFT, and then I can sell the parents and keep the baby. And I can do that through an infinite loop. And now I can breed these digital creatures. Someone turned around to me recently and said, what do you do for a living? I said, oh, I breed digital pets for money. What? It might sound crazy to you, but it makes me a bloody good income, I can tell you. And not only that, I get to change lives in the process. Because there are people.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I mean, you know, I hold a little bit of Axie Infinity, and you know, I one of these people that read the white papers, try and look at the websites and find out a bit about it, and effectively, it seemed like you've got this digital universe, this digital game. You've got these unique creatures that look like alien type of things, and you can kind of effectively, as you say, breed them. But what seems to be the case is that what would be considered a time drain to the majority of adults in, let's say, fairly developed countries is actually proving to be a very lucrative source of income for other parts of the world where there is this kind of uneven distribution of kind of global wealth. Do you want to touch on how you're utilizing that kind of weird, you know, disparity, you know, to have an impact?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got into NFTs as a hedge. So I got into cryptos, and then I got into staking as a hedge against crypto trading. And then I got into NFTs as a hedge against staking and crypto, because I wanted to diversify my portfolio. And I'll be absolutely honest, when I got into Axie, it was for profit. I had no intention of helping people. I didn't even know people needed helping at the time. I was just, how do I generate wealth? And then what happened is I watched a video. There's a documentary about how people in the Philippines were using this game to earn money during COVID. And that kind of blew me away. And the best way I can explain this very quickly is that any token that is created has two processes. There's a minting process and a burning process. So a minting process is no different to money, to fiat currency, to the pound or the dollar. When it gets printed, it gets made. Cryptocurrency goes through the same process. It needs to be created. It needs to be minted. And a burning process is when it's destroyed. And so that's how you deal with supply and demand. So the tokenomics on a cryptocurrency, the supply and the demand with the minting and the burning, added with the utility and other aspects, is what gives it its value. So most of it's done mathematically. The way that Axie have changed this is that in order to mint or to create the crypto asset SLP, you have to play a game. And so they've gamified the process of minting crypto assets. And you only have to look at Nike, Fitbit, Audible. Every company out there has gamified their process with rewards, badges, tokens. You know, Napoleon Bonaparte said it best. Men and women are willing to die for a piece of colored ribbon. You know, it's an ego. It's a status thing. It's the ability to say, I am or I have.
Yeah.
It's an identity almost, to a degree. And so having the ability to own or to generate this crypto asset by playing a game, now you've got a generation of kids where their parents have been telling them, stop playing games. Now you've actually got a generation of parents saying, go and play a game. Because these kids are now able, especially in places like the Philippines, they're able to earn more money playing a game than their parents are working. So, and let's take the Philippines as an example. The average salary in the Philippines for a Grab, like a delivery driver, is about $1 an hour. Okay. Now, that means that they're working 10 to 12 hours a day. They've got a bike that they need to maintain. They've got their license. They're working nights. It's sometimes dangerous. They're away from their family. So you put all of that into consideration, or I can pay you $5 an hour to sit home and play a game on your phone. And they can earn in 2 to 3 hours a day playing a game on their phone more than they could in any other job that they have available to them. And jobs are scarce. So that's if they're even lucky enough to get a job. So when you take that economic situation and the breeding aspect and how we're doing things, then it made me realize that this is no longer about wealth generation for me. This is about wealth generation for hundreds and thousands of other people. And I have an ability to be able to create. Now, the problem with things like Axie, for example, and it's no different to the horse racing. And by the way, the horse racing exists. There's Z.Run, there's D-Race. You can own these NFT stadiums where you take ticket sales. Now, imagine in the future, virtual reality, augmented reality, you know, horse racing, gambling, betting, breeders, owning the horses. We're at the start of this. It's coming. It's going to happen. And so Axie is just a different version of that, but the same thing. Now you can have these creatures, you can breed them, you can go into a battle and you can fight other people with them. And this is what's happening now. And we've got like 100 scholars. You know, I've got 2 full-time staff. We're generating so we do payouts every 2 weeks right now. And we're paying out between $1,000 to $20,000 every 2 weeks. That's what we're paying out for these NFTs. I mean, it's real money. It's crazy. And a lot of people say, oh, but it's not real money. Well, these people are buying like medicine. They're buying houses. They're buying like nappies for their children. They're buying food. And they're posting and they're sharing and they're giving us all of this feedback. And so we're seeing the real world difference that this is making to people. But they can't afford to go out and buy these teams themselves.
Yeah. This
because
is
an Axie costs about $500 to buy.
This is the exchange of value, isn't it? Because effectively they're in the Philippines, they've got the time, you know, and they've got access to the internet, but there is a barrier to entry to play that game themselves. So if they can't do that, then effectively it's a form of sponsorship, is it? That you're helping to kind of, they're almost like playing the game for you, and then building up your assets, but you're paying them.
But we provide the teams. They take 50% for playing the game. We take 25%, and then we put 25% into a pot for them. The way we do that is because most people won't. Most people do like a 50-50 split. Some people don't. Some people do it, you know, there's no rules about this. You know, I could give them 10%. They'd still be happy because it's better than what they're earning. But most people do a 50-50 split. The reason I'm different and the reason I do things differently is because we don't just give them the tools and say, go and play the game. Like, we've got coaches. One of our coaches, Coach Cody, he's one of the top 10 players in the world. And he's on board because he shares the same values. It's incredible how we created this this kind of motto of people before profits. And now we kind of live and we breathe this people before profits. And it's attracted some of these incredible people that we wouldn't have had access to had it have not been for this, for creating things the way we're creating them. So now we're educating people on how to be better at the game. The better they are at the game, the more money they earn. The better the quality of the tools that we give them, i.e. the better quality Axie that we give them, the better they do in the game. So you've got these managers out there struggling that are saying, oh, it's not profitable anymore, and they're leaving the game. And we're doing absolutely fine. And we're growing and everything's going really well. We've got an incredible community and everyone's positive and upbeat. And what we've realized is that, yeah, they can't afford to start the game on their own. So we'll buy the Axie, rent them out to them, but then they get their 50%. We take 25% as a management fee, and the other 25% we put into a pot. And that pot effectively is, not only are they playing to earn, there's a whole new model called play to earn, but they're also playing to own. It's like a leasing model. So after 12 months, they own those NFTs that we purchased. They've now bought off of us. We've made an ROI, a positive ROI on that investment. They now own their assets. We've now given them the opportunity to create their own wealth and to pull themselves out of poverty. So no longer are they a slave to a corporate system, but we're actually educating and inspiring them and giving them the tools to actually create their own financial freedom. Where they wouldn't have that opportunity to. And then to scale, what we did is we detached ourselves as the sponsor, and we looked at external investors and said, hey, give us your money. We'll buy a team with it. We'll manage the scholars and we'll give you a positive ROI. So now we've got external investors that are now buying these teams for us. And we've got some angel investors, and we've got people that are putting 10, 20, 30, 50,000 pounds, dollars at a time into this. They're getting anything from sort of, and it varies because it varies on multiple things, but anything from sort of like 10, 20% ROI up to 200 to 300% ROI. But the most important thing is that the biggest ROI they're getting is they're changing someone's life. And they're getting to see that process. It's not like you give money to a charity and it goes into administration. You're literally getting to see day to day the effects that you're having on this person's life. And to me, that was worth more than anything else I could make financially. Like, I don't take a profit out of Axie Infinity. I have no interest. I make my money elsewhere, and everything. And Axie now is a full-time job for me. I have 2 staff, and we work for all 3 of us. We work full-time, and we don't take any money out of it.
And flashing back to when you were saying you're in that kind of deeply unfulfilled, period of your life where you had this kind of polarized relationship with money. Do you think that by getting that fulfillment that you have, by knowing that you are impacting people's lives, on the other side of the world, has now changed your relationship with money and your ability to not have to kind of keep it away?
Absolutely. I love money in the sense that it enables me to do other things. It gives me options. I am fulfilled in helping people. And I said that at the beginning, like that's my goal. My goal is to help people. So money to me, like I've detached from the value of money now. In fact, I don't even like spending it anymore, because anytime I spend money, I'm like, oh, but I could have bought a crypto asset with that. I've almost got an addiction to buying crypto right now, because the wealth and the opportunity that is created for me, I'm in talks with my family about, like I was talking to my brother recently, and I was like, hey, how much do you owe on your mortgage? Can I buy the rest of your house just to, park some money in property? And like having those opportunities are things that I never, like, we're talking like 4 to 6 months. It's an insane journey in a very short space of time. But there's one thing I've realized in this world, is that anything can happen in an instant if you let it.
True.
If you change your mindset and if you change your perspective, anything's possible.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been looking at, Coinbase is one of the platforms that I use, but the whole market, not even just like one coin, but the whole market has been averaging over 400% over the last year. And you do some, the law of compounding, but if you have even a relatively small amount over 10 years at 400% year on year return, everyone's a multimillionaire. It's a bizarre, kind of thing. How sustainable is it? And at what point do you feel like these kind of exponential returns have to start leveling off?
I think we've got 4 to 5 years. And the thing is, if you imagine a pot where the entity that owns that pot is offering a reward. So if you lock up your money in staking, they're going to give you, like, let's say they've got, just keep it very simple. They've got 1,000 tokens that they're willing to distribute. And if you stake in their token, then you get a percentage. If you're the only person in that pot, then you're going to get an astronomically high APR because you're the only person. But as more people come into that pot, that percentage will start to go down because you're sharing it with other people. Now, we're still early. Like, people keep saying, oh, yeah, but I've missed the boat. Oh, I'm late. We're still early. Like, investors are in now. Yes, there's a lot of institutions are in now, but it's still not governed. It's still not regulated. And until the regulation comes in, there's a lot of mainstream that can't get involved or simply don't want to.
Yeah.
But eventually it's like Facebook, you might have like waited 3 or 4 years to get an account, but I'm pretty sure you've got an account now. Like 10 years later, you're at the point you're like, oh God, when everyone else is on it, I guess I better. Crypto's no different. You have a choice. If you do get in now, then yes, you can experience some of these early gains. But no, they won't be sustainable in the long run. They will level out, and they will probably, I'm sure they will still be higher than a traditional bank account. I don't even know if traditional banks will exist in the future. I'm not sure how that looks.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is an element now where I consider normal now to be anything between 70 to 150%. I won't touch anything. Yeah. So if I'm not making 70 to 150% ROI, then, and that's not even compounding. Like, if I'm compounding, it's more like 400 to 500% ROI. So that to me is now my standard. And if it's anything less than that, I feel like I'm not being efficient. If it's anything more than that, it feels a little bit like, could it be a scam? Is it a rug pull? Like, you look at Axie Infinity, for example, you can stake your AXS tokens right now for about 150 to 200%. But they've got $2 billion in value locked. So $2 billion is locked in that pool. And that pool went live, what was it, a week ago? So they've managed to secure $2 billion in just over a week in locked funds. I mean, that is the power when everyone comes together of this decentralized finance. You're talking about a game that has generated last quarter $750 million, has onboarded 2 million daily players, and they're not even on the App Store yet. You can't download them on an App Store. This is still a game that is in alpha that hasn't officially released.
It is crazy because people will hear that and say, but there's lots of games that you can get for free. Like, why would people be on Axie when they can be on Minecraft and things like that? But the key difference is,
you don't own Minecraft.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, the players on Minecraft, aren't co-owners of Minecraft, and if you are, if you've got skin in the game and you're building these assets, then you've got a different relationship with that game than if you're just playing it passively, or even worse, having money extracted from you rather than kind of building it up, which a lot of these games, with the loot boxes, they're designed to extract money.
Look at any of them. Look at Fortnite, look at Warzone, CSGO, Dota, any of these things where you can buy skins and people might go, oh yeah, but who's going to spend money? Like, there's a market. Whether you choose to believe or accept it or not, there is a huge, incredibly lucrative gaming market out there, which is any technology like that you use, whether it be Zoom or anything else, everything originates from gamers. Because the competitive esports gaming world, where things like TeamSpeak and Discord, all of these, like the gaming chairs, the microphones that we use, everything come about through gamers. And it got adopted into the professional world, and then it got passed down to consumers. That's where, like, that's why when you look at Pepsi and Coke, they start advertising to kids, because if you hook kids at a young age, you've got them for life.
That's it.
And kids like to play games. And so do adults, to be fair. They just feel like they shouldn't, but maybe that would change now. I mean,
when there's money at stake, won't it?
No, that's it. You look at the Western world and, it's like, oh, you shouldn't play games. Games are for kids. But you look at places like Korea and Asia and things like that, gamers are on the side of buses. They take gamers into the football stadiums to talk to the players before a match. Because the gamers are the ones that, the girls want their boys to be gamers, their boyfriends to be gamers.
It's a huge paradigm shift because, when I was growing up, my parents was like, what kind of career do you want? And this kind of stuff. And my kids' heroes are YouTubers and gamers, and it's difficult for any parent to say, well, hold on a minute, actually do some study, do some work, because they're heroes. They're earning more than I am, and they're on YouTube. They're playing games like 10 hours a day and they're absolutely killing it.
What do you want your kids to do? Oh, go and get a job for 40 years and work in a job you're not happy with, or enjoy yourself watching people. And like, what is life?
Yeah, that's it.
But I do have a rule though with my daughter. Like, she can consume as much content as she wants, but in order for her to do that, there has to be a ratio of what she consumes and what she creates.
Nice.
So like, you can play Minecraft, but you have to learn how to mod and how to build in it as well. And that way I feel like I'm at least getting her to start understanding the creation side as well as the consumerism side, because I think that they're both important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's one, and that's why with my kids, when they're watching, whether it's kind of Roblox or Minecraft YouTube videos, then I see them playing and it's like, okay, they're just like modeling strategies here. They're kind of getting the shortcuts and then kind of applying them. And given that the world is digital, that's actually a form of education.
I would much rather my daughter be watching Twitch or YouTube with like her, It's Funny or whoever they are, like in Roblox and Minecraft, Dan DTM, all of these people, and I've watched them because I've seen what she watches, because I'm interested in like the content she consumes and why is she walking downstairs with an American accent. Like, I see it a lot, but would I rather her watch that or like EastEnders and the news? Like, what else is she going to consume content wise? Like, if she's happy, great, you do you. What I do find fascinating and what I love, and you mentioned Roblox, which is interesting because that was a game that went public recently. Axie is following a similar model. So what people don't see with Axie at the moment is that it hasn't even launched. When they launch their land gameplay, you'll be able to take your Axie characters and put them into land, and they're going to launch an SDK, which basically means developers are going to be able to build their own mini games within the environment. So Axie are building a sandbox. Now, these games that you create, if you build a game in Roblox and you create it, Roblox own the game. They own the property, they own the rights, they own everything. They can shut it down, they can do what they want. In Axie, when you build a game, that game is then minted into an NFT. You own that. You can sell that, rent that, you can do what you want with that. And in land, there are these pixels. You can deploy the game onto land. So now landowners, they can charge advertising rights, they can charge developers to rent their games out. That's why plots of land right now are selling for like 7 figures. Like, you're paying 100,000 minimum for a plot of land.
In a digital universe.
In a digital world, it's like a 1 pixel square on a digital map. And when you start looking at this metaverse that's growing and all of these different worlds that are being created, Decentraland and Lucian and all of these other places, you start to realize that we're a lot closer to this kind of Ready Player One environment than you realize. Like, we're very close to, you will not in the future physically go out to work in the same way as people do now. Robots and a lot of the automations will do those jobs. To earn money, you'll sit at home and you'll play on your phone or your computer. More people will be earning money in a digital world than in the physical.
It is mind-boggling. My head is only just starting to kind of get familiar with some of these terms and principles. But what's exciting is that I love change, and I think there's massive opportunities when things change. And it does seem that those people that resistant to change or don't want to acknowledge change just going to be left behind. And those people, I mean, children are very adaptable. You know, they will pick things up and run with it. But I think people, I mean, it sounds like we're a similar age. You know, we could go either way. We could kind of, you know, look at it and think, don't need to know about that. That's not what I do. But if you embrace it, then there are huge opportunities in there. If someone's listening to this right now and they want to learn what you're doing in terms of, you know, the Axie Infinity and the scholarships and things like that, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
The best way is through the website. So one of the fortunate things about having my business and websites and automated systems is that I've managed to build out a very fluid process now. So our website is axiescholar.co.uk, AXIE scholar.co.uk, and that kind of gives you everything you need to know about what is Axie, what we're doing, how you can get involved. So I do believe, and a guy, as I mentioned earlier, I follow, he said that we have a duty of care for anyone coming into crypto. Crypto is an incredible space. It's fascinating, it's beautiful, but it's scary at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I think that we do have a duty of care, because I'm not an expert, and I'm definitely not a professional, and I'm not someone who can give financial advice. I'm just an average guy that's doing something that he loves and is getting paid to do it. And I love what I do. Now, I've had to learn a lot, and the security has to be the most important thing you do. I mean, like, for example, like my crypto is stored on a hard wallet, which is connected to an online wallet, which, you know, everything is done in a certain way to protect myself. And if you don't know what you're doing, it is very easy that you'll either make a mistake or get scammed. So you have to, before you even consider getting involved in this space, you have to educate yourself on some of the common pitfalls. You know, when you go onto a Discord channel and say, hey, I'm new, can you help me? And then 10 people send you a direct message saying, yes, I'm from Help Desk, give me your address. And you connect your wallet, and then you lose all your funds, because like that's the most common way to get scammed, you know, or people getting you to put your secret phrase into what you think is an official website. They're the most common ways to get scammed. So as much as I love decentralized finance and it's incredible, it's not without risks. And you have to just be aware that there are things that you can do. If you send the wrong coin to the wrong address, you lose your money. If you send the wrong coin over the wrong network, you lose your money. You know, if you make a mistake, like, you can lose your money in that sense. If you get scammed, obviously you lose your money. So it's not just about, oh, well, should I put my money into this coin? Because if the value goes down, you lose your money. Like, there's a lot of ways you can lose money. And so but there's a lot of ways you can make money. I just don't want it to be too hyped up where people go, yeah, crypto's great, because I spent a full month learning all of the negative bad sides first. So, and I even got into a couple that I knew were bad, and I put a little bit in so that I could experience. I've experienced a rug pull, and a rug pull is when a developer hypes up a new project and you think it's great and you put your money in and they just disappear with all of the money. And I got into that, and I put $50 in just to see what would happen, because I had to experience it. Because even though it's only $50, the fact that someone stole my money, it hurts. And to experience that taught me a valuable lesson to make. And when I transfer money, if I'm transferring £100,000, I'm not going to transfer it in one go. I'm going to transfer £1. And if that £1 goes through successfully, then I'll follow it up with the remainder. But I will always send a test first. And it's little things. And that leads me on to the next part, which is complacency. When you sit clicking day in, day out, and you're like, oh, I'm used to this now. Yeah, this is easy. Oh, yeah, I get crypto. It's great. That's when you'll make a mistake. Yeah. That's when you'll type something in wrong, or you'll not pay attention and you'll do something wrong. So yeah, just avoid the scams and avoid complacency. And yes, it's a scary place, but it's also a beautiful one. And if you're careful, then you should be fine.
Yeah, that's the thing. And wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from experiencing even at a small level. You play the game, figure out the game, and then don't expect to be perfect at it, because that's where the complacency brings in. But, at least you're going to make more informed decisions from a place of, knowledge and previous experience.
But at least, yeah, take action and get started, right?
That's it. Better, what's that saying, ideal time to plant a tree 10 years ago, next best time is now. So if you're not in crypto, even if you get in very, very small amounts, there is, a huge potential upside, and you learn a lot about technology and, like you say, different ways that the world is heading. Yeah, we all become a futurologist, I think, just by kind of being in this crypto space, because all these white papers are predicting the future and the applications of it. So it's a fascinating place. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset. See you again soon for more.
Thank you for listening to Modern Mindset with Adam Cox. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review. Modern Mindset, picking the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours.